Hey, what's up everyone? How's it going? This is Waj from the MW Technology channel, and in this video, we'll be doing a review of the BenQ BL3201PH. This is a 4K monitor that's 32 inches, it has IPS, so great versatility in terms of different viewing angles, and it has a lot of things going for it. It might be the ultimate 4K monitor that I've ever used, but there's still a couple of factors that you should consider before pulling the trigger and getting this potentially ultimate 4K monitor. So let's get right into my review. Now, the first thing that we're going to take a look at on the BenQ BL3201 is the physical size. Now, it's a 32-inch diagonal size, but in terms of the actual panel size, it measures about 64 centimeters in terms of its height, 74 centimeters width, and about 21.3 centimeters in terms of its thickness. Now, thankfully, the screen has a matte anti-glare finish, so it's not glossy, so you can put it in brightly lit environments with minimal glare. Now, the stand that comes with the BenQ is pretty good. It has 45-degree swivel from left to right. It has 15 centimeters in terms of travel for vertical adjustments and plenty of tilt for up and down adjustments on the panel itself. Now, thankfully, it also has a proper 100mm by 100mm VESA mount connection, so you can easily attach it to a wall or perhaps a desk stand if you so desire. The other cool thing about the stand itself is at the base of the swivel, it has a little place where you can put the included remote control that comes with the BenQ, and this allows you to basically control the entire monitor in terms of navigating through the menu and switching between the different picture profile presets. So number one is set to the regular sRGB setting. Number two is a CAD setting by default, which basically increases your contrast ratio to make lines a little bit more sharper and clearer. And number three basically reduces the amount of blue on the display, which is supposed to help alleviate eye strain and fatigue, especially during prolonged usage of the monitor. Now, keep in mind that each of these settings can be changed, so you can program your own presets or use the existing ones in the menu itself and have a customized range of different presets for different applications and purposes. Now, in terms of connections, thankfully we have a lot of different options. We have a full link DVI connection at the very top, followed by two HDMI 1.4 certified connections. That's good for 4K at 30 Hz. And we have a full-size DisplayPort connection followed by a mini DisplayPort or Thunderbolt connections, which is also 1.2 certified. And those are good for full 4K resolutions at the 60 Hz refresh rate. Now, there is a pretty good multimedia hub on this monitor that primarily consists of a lot of USB 3 connections. If you take a look at the very bottom of the monitor, you'll see a one in-stream USB 3.0 connection, which is going to connect to your computer, followed by three USB 3 connections, as well as a mini USB 2 connection for the connection of the controller. And you can see we also have an 1/8-inch input for the speakers and the headphone jack that's on the monitor. At the side of the monitor, we have a full-size SD card slot, so you can transfer your data back and forth. We also do have two other USB 3 connections and a headphone jack. Now, with all that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the actual picture specifications on this monitor. And as all of you probably know by now, is that it has a native resolution of 3840 by 2160 at 60 Hz. Now, you can also bump down the resolution to 2560 by 1440 or 1080p, but you still can't go higher than 60 Hz, unfortunately. It is a 10-bit panel, but in terms of brightness, the panel is rated for 350 nit, and this is a full IPS certified in-plane switching monitor. So compared to a standard TN panel that most 4K monitors are available with, it has a great degree of field of view, over 178 degrees to be exact. Now, I do have to mention that even though from side to side, this monitor is pretty good in terms of overall viewing angles, but if you lift up your head above the monitor height, you do notice a considerable shift in terms of color. Everything becomes a little bit more hazy and gray, and your colors desaturate, and the contrast also reduces significantly as well. So if you're really using this, even though it's IPS, you definitely want to be at kind of a sweet spot around the monitor, and you don't want to really view the monitor above a certain point, both above and below the panel. Now, the response time of this BenQ is around 4 milliseconds, which is pretty good for most multi-purpose monitors, certainly not up to spec of most professional level gaming grade monitors, and it doesn't have any of the G-Sync technology that some of those gaming grade monitors have, so it's certainly not a dedicated gaming monitor by any stretch of the imagination. But for most people that use their monitor for a whole bunch of different applications as well as gaming, I think 4 milliseconds is certainly acceptable. Now, in terms of color rendition, the BenQ is a 10-bit panel, as we already mentioned. So that means it can replicate 100% sRGB color space. So that is almost up to the level of most reference grade panels that a lot of professionals use to get the most true to life color reproduction available. Furthermore, the monitor is built to cover Rec. 709 color space, which is great if you create content that needs to meet broadcast standards and regulations. And with some additional color calibration, you can probably get it even more accurate depending upon what kind of applications you're going to be using it for. So that, coupled with the Ultra HD specification, could definitely make this an excellent monitor for any professional trying to get into the 4K space. The other interesting thing about the BenQ is that it utilizes zero flicker technology, which is supposed to eliminate the backlight flickering that happens between all of the different brightness settings that you can set the monitor to. And this should also effectively reduce eye fatigue as well. Now, for me personally, one of the cool things about 4K, especially at this size, is that you can really utilize that resolution quite well. Because of the larger overall screen size, you don't need to bump down the resolution to make it more usable or change any of the DPI settings. You can use this monitor at 1:1 pixel configuration. Additionally, if you're coming from a multi-monitor setup, effectively a 4K monitor is 4 1080p's slapped together. And one of the cool things that you can do is BenQ has a couple of different software where you can organize your different workspaces. So here you can see I have a quadrant for my photo editing, for some of my documents that I have in my Google Docs, as well as my video editing needs in Premiere Pro and my motion graphics that I'm creating on After Effects. So essentially with this larger overall screen size, I can actually use the different quadrants and be able to see the fine text without too much eye strain. Now, as you saw from the input panel at the back, there are a lot of different devices you can connect to this BenQ monitor, and there's actually a setting where you can actually set up multiple inputs and basically view them at the same time. There are two specific modes that I'm talking about. One is a picture-by-picture mode, which is a side-by-side representation of two different inputs. You can change the overall aspect ratio of the image to make them fit a little bit better, but if you set them both at 16:9 aspect ratio, you are going to get big bars from the top and bottom. And here we can see on one side we have the Windows PC hooked up, and the other side I have my MacBook Air. And there's also a picture-in-picture mode where we've set up the MacBook Air to be a little pop-up window on the main display itself, which is comprised of my Windows input. So you can do a whole bunch of different things. You can also swap between the inputs and basically customize a whole bunch of different input configurations to your desire. Now, to be completely honest with you guys, I probably wouldn't use this picture-in-picture mode or the picture-by-picture mode. I typically just like to focus on one thing at a time in terms of one particular input setup. But I don't know, that's just me. Perhaps somebody out there may find this feature a little bit handy. Now, just to sum up our review, we're going to do a quick pros and cons list of the BenQ to kind of organize my thoughts. We're going to start with the cons. First of all, it's not really a dedicated gaming monitor, although it can do a lot of your gaming applications with really ease at 60 Hertz refresh rate, so it's perfectly playable for pretty much everybody. But for hardcore gamers at 4 millisecond response time, it's not really a gamer grade 4K monitor. Now, that's not really out yet. We're going to see probably in the near future, you're going to have some gaming grade Ultra HD monitors that have a response time faster than 4 milliseconds. Although 4 milliseconds isn't certainly bad for me. I'm kind of like a casual gamer, so that's perfectly fine. But I could definitely see for some hardcore gamers that play a lot of online stuff, they want something that's 2 millisecond, 1 millisecond, and it doesn't have the G-Sync technology that some of the new BenQ and modern day gaming monitors are having to kind of give you the most smoothest frame rate possible. So with all those factors, it's really not an optimal gaming monitor for all you hardcore gamers out there. Now, my second con is, even though this can do 4K at 60 Hertz, which is fantastic, at 1440p and at 1080p, you're still limited to 60 Hertz, which is kind of a bummer. I would love to see a higher refresh rate and lower resolutions. That would have been real great for people that want to play games at higher refresh rate, or people that are perhaps making videos at a higher refresh rate and things like that. And certainly these days, 120 Hertz monitor is kind of a normal standard for monitors that are 1080p, and I would love to have that feature on this BenQ 4K. And the last thing is that even though it has a lot of great connectivity options, you're still limited to HDMI 1.4. Now we have HDMI 2.0 that's available in some really high-end monitors, and the throughput on that is probably the best. It's better than a DisplayPort 1.2, which is around 17 gigabits per second, and the new HDMI 2.0 can do like 18 and higher gigabits per second, versus HDMI 1.4 can have a maximum throughput of something around 10.2 gigabits per second, which is fine for getting 4K through the connection, but in terms of higher refresh rates, it's kind of limited there. So I'd love to see HDMI 2.0 option, and especially considering you're going to buy this monitor to have for a couple of years down the road, that would have been a nice kind of future-proof option. Now, talking about the plus sides of this monitor, and there are a lot of plus sides. Firstly, I think 32 inches is a fantastic size for a UHD monitor. It's a perfect mix of having a really nice, clear, sharp image if you're using some of the DPI setting adjustments that's available on Windows and Mac OS X. But if you want to set it at the full resolution at 1:1 DPI settings, this is definitely a usable size, especially if you want the most real estate possible on your screen. So 32 inches, definitely a better size if you want to use that monitor to the full extent, compared to 27 or 28 inch monitors, where it's very difficult to use the monitor at its full 4K resolution without having any DPI setting adjustments. Furthermore, another thing I really like about the monitor is its color accuracy. It's a 10-bit panel with the full sRGB coverage. So if you're any kind of professional that does any kind of graphic design or video or photo editing, this is really quite ideal. And if you specifically calibrate this monitor professionally to whatever your needs are, you're probably going to get even better performance out of it. Moving along, I really like the remote control that came with this BenQ. It's not only easier to navigate through the on-screen menu to change the whole bunch of different settings, which is kind of finicky if you don't have a remote control, and after years of using the on-screen buttons on a traditional monitor, having a remote control definitely made sense. And I really like how you can select between the 3 different color presets, and specifically you can customize each of those presets for your specific application. So you can use one for your animation, use one for photo editing, and it's really quite a handy tool, especially if you want to have perhaps one setting for your daytime use, one setting for your nighttime use, and there's a ton of capabilities, and that little remote control certainly comes at handy from time to time. Additionally, the stand that comes with the BenQ is pretty good, lots of versatility, but I like the fact that you can mount it to a wall or your own desk mount because it has a full standard 100mm VESA mount connection, so that's quite fantastic. And lastly, as we mentioned before, it has a lot of great connectivity options. You can connect a whole bunch of different devices to this 4K monitor and perhaps use it as kind of a central display. And because it has picture-to-picture mode, there's a lot of versatility and a whole bunch of different things you can do with all those different input connections. Additionally, it has a lot of USB 3.0 connections, which is fantastic, and an SD card reader. And if you want to use a headphone jack, it has that too. So no complaints there in terms of connectivity. And just to sum up, you could see by the length of pros versus cons, I really do like the BenQ monitor. And perhaps the only hurdle most people are going to face is trying to justify $1,000 monitor. And even though these days 4K monitors are getting cheaper and cheaper, in fact, the Samsung 28-inch monitor that we reviewed a couple of months ago has now dropped down to below the $500 mark on Amazon. And that is a 60 hertz monitor that has the same resolution as this, but it's not IPS. And Dell has a monitor that we're going to be reviewing soon that is IPS and 27 inches, and it comes in at a little bit more of a competitive price tag. But you have to consider the fact that this is really a optimal size. It's made for professionals and has lots of versatility for gamers and computer enthusiasts none the like. But overall, I would recommend this monitor to anybody that wants something that they're going to keep for a long time, and that way you can really justify the price of this quite well, because 4K is here to stay. You're obviously going to have technology that's going to surpass this, but I think overall, in terms of color accuracy and the quality of build materials and the overall experience you get with this monitor is a pretty sound, safe bet that you're going to be satisfied with a monitor like this for a pretty decent long time. But overall, if you have any questions at all about anything I talked about, please make sure to leave that on a comment down below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you like this video and this review helped you out in any way. And definitely make sure you're subscribed to our channel, because we have a whole bunch of different 4K monitor reviews and comparisons coming out, specifically comparing this monitor with a couple of different monitors that are coming out. So if you're interested in that, again, make sure you're subscribed, favorite the video if you liked it, and thanks so much for your support. We'll see you later. Take care.